That's the conclusion, but the love has never ended.
According to some British tabloid reports at the time, he was kidnapped and taken to a cottage where he was forced to have sex with McKinney.
Nightmare ordeal happened to what was once a normal, all-American kid.
Joyce McKinney is given plenty of screen time to tell her story. According to her, she travelled to Britain to free the love of her life, missionary Kirk Cameron, from the clutches of the Mormon Church.
All I knew is this powerful group had done something to the man I loved.
The film presents different narratives. It doesn't provide or can't provide the definitive account of what actually happened to Joyce McKinney. There were limits to Morris's investigation.
A beauty queen, a missing missionary, and a cabin full of chains. In 1977, a young Mormon vanished outside a quiet English chapel, only to reappear days later with a story too bizarre to believe. He said he was kidnapped and then seduced at gunpoint. The culprit, Joyce McKinney, a former Miss Wyoming who claimed it was all just true love. This is the real-life case that shocked the continents, rewrote tabloid history, and shattered every assumption about obsession, power, and gender. Welcome to the Manacled Mormon case, one of the most twisted love stories ever told. The abduction of Kirk Anderson. He was gone, just vanished from the church steps. No witnesses, no struggle, just a missionary missing. It was a crisp September morning in 1977 when Kirk Anderson, a 21-year-old Mormon missionary, disappeared from the steps of a church meeting house in Newell, Surrey, England. Young, devout, and earnest, Anderson had been diligently serving his mission, spreading the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But that day, he vanished without a trace. 3 days later, Anderson reappeared, shaken and disheveled, with a harrowing tale that would soon captivate the British public and media. He claimed he had been abducted at gunpoint by a woman from his past, Joyce McKinney, a former beauty queen from North Carolina. According to Anderson, McKinney had taken him to a secluded cottage in Devon, where she chained him to a bed and sexually assaulted him over the course of several days. The story was as sensational as it was unprecedented, a male victim alleging sexual assault by a woman. The British tabloids had a field day, dubbing it the Manacled Mormon case. Headlines screamed of sex, religion, and bondage, and the public couldn't get enough. But as the details unfolded, questions arose. McKinney claimed the encounter was consensual, that she and Anderson were in love, and that he had willingly joined her. She portrayed herself as a woman scorned, desperately trying to reclaim her lost love from the clutches of a controlling religious institution. The case never went to trial. McKinney and her accomplice, Keith May, skipped bail and fled the UK, leaving behind a storm of controversy and speculation. They were later arrested in the United States for passport fraud, but received only suspended sentences. McKinney remained a fugitive from British justice, and the truth of what happened in the Devon cottage remained shrouded in mystery. In the years that followed, McKinney's life took further bizarre turns, including a high-profile case involving the cloning of her pet dog and a fatal hit-and-run incident in 2019. Yet, through it all, she maintained her version of events, insisting on her innocence and the purity of her love for Anderson. Was Joyce McKinney a delusional stalker, or a woman fighting against a powerful institution for the man she loved? And what does this case reveal about our perceptions of gender, power, and the media's role in shaping public opinion? Joyce McKinney, the beauty queen with a secret plan. She was Miss Wyoming. He was a Mormon missionary. What could possibly connect their worlds, except obsession? Before she became infamous, Joyce McKinney was, by all appearances, a Southern beauty with charm to spare. Born and raised in Avery County, North Carolina, Joyce was smart, articulate, and strikingly attractive. She earned a scholarship to Brigham Young University in Utah, where her life took a strange and fateful turn. That's where she met Kirk Anderson. He was tall, soft-spoken, and deeply devout, a rising star within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She was vivacious, passionate, and irresistibly drawn to him. According to McKinney, it was love at first sight. But to Anderson, their relationship was a brief and tumultuous chapter, one he was desperate to close. Joyce, however, saw something else: destiny. She believed God had brought them together. When Anderson broke off contact, she didn't see a breakup. She saw interference by his church, by his bishop, by a system she believed had brainwashed him. And then he disappeared. Or rather, he was sent away. Kirk Anderson had been relocated overseas by church leaders, assigned to a mission post in England. Most saw it as routine. Joyce saw it as exile. She became convinced that the Mormon church had kidnapped her lover, brainwashed him, and taken him from her. That's when she began to plan. Armed with determination, money from an anonymous benefactor, and accompanied by her friend Keith May, Joyce traveled across the Atlantic. The two posed as journalists to locate Kirk's new address in Surrey. Then, on the morning of September 14th, 1977, outside the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Chapel in Ewell, they made their move. According to police reports, Kirk was approached by a man claiming to have a message. Seconds later, he was bundled into a car at gunpoint. 3 days passed before he emerged, reporting to the police that he had been taken to a remote cottage in Devon, handcuffed to a bed, and repeatedly assaulted. When police raided the property, they found damning evidence: chains, ropes, and Polaroid photos. But McKinney told a very different story. In a tearful press conference that would go viral decades later, she painted herself not as a predator, but a tragic heroine. "I would have skied down Mount Everest in the nude with a carnation up my nose if it meant bringing Kirk back to me," she told reporters. "I loved him." She insisted it had been a romantic reunion, and that Kirk had even read scriptures with her before making love. But forensic evidence, Kirk's testimony, and the trauma in his demeanor told a darker story. Still, the UK legal system was unprepared. Male rape by a woman wasn't formally recognized under British law at the time. The case was reduced to charges of kidnapping and indecent assault. Then, just as the case was heading to trial, Joyce and Keith vanished. They fled the country disguised in costume. Joyce allegedly dressed as a nun and disappeared into America. But this wasn't the end of Joyce McKinney's bizarre journey. It was only the beginning. What drives someone to cross an ocean for love or for control? And how far can a person go before love turns into something far more dangerous? A fugitive in love, escape, disguise, and the tabloid frenzy. They vanished into thin air, leaving only scandal, shackles, and an international manhunt behind them. Just days before facing trial for the abduction and sexual assault of Kirk Anderson, Joyce McKinney and Keith May slipped out of the country in a blaze of wigs, forged passports, and sheer audacity. It was an escape worthy of a Hollywood thriller, and it was only the beginning of what would become a global media circus. The British press, already intoxicated by the sensationalism of the Manacled Mormon case, exploded. The Daily Mirror published lurid accounts of Joyce's supposed seduction tactics, referring to her as the Mormon's Lolita. Meanwhile, the Daily Express painted her as a tragic romantic, a woman willing to do anything for love. The British tabloids were divided, but one thing was clear: the public was obsessed. And then came the twist no one saw coming. Within weeks of Joyce's disappearance, another set of photos surfaced. These weren't just bondage and bedposts. They were pornographic. The News of the World published a scandalous expose alleging that Joyce had worked as a sex worker and model for adult magazines under pseudonyms. The photos showed her in explicit poses, clad in leather, wielding whips. Joyce was devastated, or furious, or both. from a hidden location in the United States. She gave interviews proclaiming her innocence. She claimed the photos were doctored, that she had been set up by enemies of the church, and that the British tabloids were on a witch hunt. But the tide was turning. In Britain, the Crown Prosecution Service was still pursuing justice. Joyce and Keith had become fugitives, and their refusal to face trial left many questioning the sincerity of her romantic claims. Authorities later tracked the pair to the United States, where they were charged with passport fraud for using forged documents during their escape. But shockingly, they were given only suspended sentences. No jail time. The British legal system was left hanging. No extradition. No trial. No justice. Kirk Anderson, after returning to Utah, refused to comment further on the ordeal. Those close to him say he was traumatized and chose a life of quiet anonymity, retreating into the safety of his faith and community. But Joyce McKinney, she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. She would spend the next 3 decades resurfacing, every few years, with another headline, another bizarre twist. A woman who once claimed to be the most romantic woman in the world would soon be at the center of stories far stranger than even the Manacled Mormon. Did she truly believe in her love story? Or was she simply rewriting it, over and over, for the camera? From love chains to clone dogs, the strange afterlife of Joyce McKinney. She vanished in a nun's habit, re-emerged with 5 clone pit bulls, and sued a documentary filmmaker. But the most shocking chapter was still to come. In 2008, more than 3 decades after the Manacled Mormon scandal, Joyce McKinney resurfaced in the most unexpected way. Now going by the name Bernann McKinney, she appeared in Seoul, South Korea, cradling 5 clone pit bull puppies. The dogs were genetic replicas of her beloved pet, Booger, who had died 2 years prior. McKinney had paid $50, 0 to our NL Bio, a South Korean biotech firm, to clone Booger. The company, anticipating a public relations coup, discounted its nominal $150, 0 fee. McKinney claimed that Booger had saved her life by protecting her from an attack by another dog and assisting her during her recovery. She told the International Herald Tribune, "When Booger was dying, his eyes locked on mine, and he told me with his eyes, 'Don't be sad, because I am going to see you again.'" However, the media quickly connected Bernann McKinney to Joyce McKinney, the woman who had scandalized Britain in the 1970s. When confronted, McKinney initially denied the connection, snapping at reporters, "Are you going to ask me about my dogs or not? Because that's all I'm prepared to talk to you about." The bizarre story caught the attention of acclaimed documentary filmmaker Errol Morris, who released Tabloid in 2010. The film delved into McKinney's past, her obsession with Kirk Anderson, and her recent dog cloning endeavor. McKinney participated in the documentary but later sued Morris, claiming she was misled about the nature of the film. The lawsuit was dismissed in court. In 2019, McKinney made headlines again when she was charged in a fatal hit-and-run incident in Los Angeles. She was accused of driving a 2006 white GMC pickup that struck and killed 91-year-old Holocaust survivor Gennady Bolotsky as he was walking his dog. In a marked crosswalk, McKinney faced felony charges, including assault with a deadly weapon, hit-and-run with injury, and vehicular manslaughter. Following her arrest, a judge declared McKinney mentally unfit to stand trial and ordered her to be housed in a mental health facility. She was taken to the Metropolitan State Hospital in Norwalk, California, where she remained under psychiatric care. From a beauty queen to a fugitive, a dog cloner, and a defendant in a tragic accident, Joyce McKinney's life has been a series of sensational headlines. But beneath the tabloid stories lies a complex tale of obsession, love, and the human desire for connection. Media, myth, and madness. The unraveling of a public obsession. They said she was insane. They said she was in love. But no one could agree on who Joyce McKinney really was, not even Joyce herself. As the decades rolled on, Joyce McKinney didn't just become a footnote in tabloid history. She became a symbol. Of what? Exactly. Depended on who you asked. To some, she was a tragic romantic, caught in the gears of a merciless institution, the Mormon Church, and punished for wanting her love story to have a different ending. To others, she was a manipulative predator who hid behind the mask of innocence, while orchestrating one of the most bizarre sex crimes ever reported in the UK. But to the press, she was a gold mine. No matter how much time had passed, her name could still sell headlines. The term Manacled Mormon retained its strange, almost gothic power. In 2010, when Errol Marsh released Tabloid, the film split audiences. Some saw Joyce as mentally ill. Others saw her as heartbreakingly sincere. What no one could deny was that she had charisma. Her voice, sweet, southern, pleading, pulled viewers in. She claimed she had been vilified, that Kirk was her soulmate, that she had been targeted by the church, by the media, by a society that couldn't comprehend a woman chasing after the man she loved. But there was always the evidence, the chains, the sedatives, the testimony. Joyce denied it all, again and again. Yet her obsession with public perception never waned. She monitored articles about herself. She emailed journalists. She confronted critics. She wanted her version of the story to be heard and believed. When the hit-and-run charges emerged in 2019, many journalists hesitated. Was it even her? The woman accused of killing a 91-year-old Holocaust survivor while speeding through a Los Angeles crosswalk sounded more like a tragic figure than a tabloid villain. But it was Joyce. A lifetime of chasing headlines had come full circle. This time, the spotlight wasn't romantic or scandalous. It was damning. The court ruled her mentally unfit to stand trial. Those close to the case described her as incoherent, paranoid, rambling about conspiracies and persecution. Her life, once the subject of sensational newspaper spreads, had collapsed into clinical reports and institutional walls. Was this the final chapter of Joyce McKinney, or simply another rewrite in her ever-shifting narrative? The Woman in the Mirror, legacy of the Manacled Mormon case. If you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back. But what if the abyss wears a smile, clutches a Bible, and swears it was all for love? The Manacled Mormon case didn't end with a conviction. It didn't end with a confession. It ended in silence, and in questions that still echo. Decades later, Joyce McKinney remains a cultural enigma. She defied every archetype: predator, victim, romantic, lunatic, refusing to stay within any one narrative. Her life became a kaleidoscope of contradictions. One minute, she was sobbing on national television, cradling clone puppies like children. The next, she was facing charges for killing a Holocaust survivor. At every turn, her story demanded attention, and the world, again and again, gave it. But what did that attention cost? Kirk Anderson never gave another public interview after his testimony. He returned to the safety of his faith, his community, and eventually faded into a life of quiet anonymity. He had been dragged into a tabloid whirlwind, his trauma questioned, mocked, sexualized. The legal system had no language, no precedent for a male victim of sexual violence at the time. The emotional scars he bore were largely invisible, but perhaps deeper for the very reason. Joyce, meanwhile, became the story, not the act, not the evidence. She lived for the headlines. She fed off the spectacle. But in the end, she also became its casualty. From a 21-year-old beauty queen obsessed with her Mormon boyfriend, to a 60-something woman institutionalized after a fatal hit-and-run, her life reflects something deeper and darker about modern society. We crave simple villains. We crave outrageous women. especially those who defy gender norms. We love the femme fatale until she becomes real. But Joyce wasn't simple, and her story doesn't come with a clean moral. Was she mentally ill, manipulative, heartbroken, predatory? Was she all of those things? Or was she, as one reporter once mused, just a woman who refused to be forgotten? The Manacled Mormon case remains one of the strangest, most unforgettable criminal cases in British history, not because of the crime alone, but because of the mirror it holds up to the rest of us. Do we punish women more harshly when they want what society says they shouldn't? Do we believe men less when they claim to be victims? And perhaps most chillingly, could any one of us, become like Joyce McKinney if the wrong obsession took root in just the right heart?